G'day guys, Casey from Lured In Fishing here. Today I would like to show you how to tie a garfish rig or a mullet rig using a quill float or a pencil float. Little split shot there, some nice small long shank hooks and your silicone float stoppers. Okay guys, so for our garfish rig or our waggler float rig, whether you're using it for garfish or mullet or any of those smaller fish, using waggler floats, quill floats, anything like that, we're going to start with our main line or our leader line. So you always want to be attaching a leader to your braided line. You can tie this obviously on straight nylon. First thing we're going to do is put one of our silicone float stoppers onto our line. So to do that, we have that little loop on our float stopper there. We're going to put our line through that loop. We're going to double it back on itself, creating a loop-to-loop connection. We're then going to feed off one of our float stoppers and one of those little beads onto our leader line. So that is going to sit above our float, which is going to allow us to adjust the depth. So once we've done that, we're going to put on our waggler float or our quill float, pen float, any of those long style floats. So these guys here have a tiny little microscopic eye on the body of the float there, as well as a plastic eyelet on the lower section of the float. So we're going to thread through both of those. So main line is going to go through that little eye, keeping our line up against the body of the float there, and then through our secondary eye at the base of the float. So that's going to connect our float onto our leader line. Our next step is going to be to tie on our next float stopper, which is going to stop our float from going down. So once again, we get our little chain of float stoppers here. What we're going to do is just the silicone piece. So we're going to go through that loop, double our line, slide one stopper off our loop onto our main line and slide him up to the base of our float there. So that's going to fix the float from going down or from going up. Now that we've done this, now one little thing to be mindful of, using those little loops on the float stoppers there, it can put little kinks in your line. So I do like to trim off that excess line there just to get rid of any of that kind of scuffed up line. So we're going to cut that off. We're then going to tie on our hook. So just for the video purposes, I'm going to use something a fair bit bigger than what I would typically use. That's a size 4 long shank. Typically for garfish, for mullet, I would normally use a little size 12 long shank, or even little fly hooks, the little Camasan B440s in a size 10. Really good for the garfish. But just for this one, we're going to go through the eye of our hook. We're going to make a loop like so, and we're going to tie a uni knot, which you can find in our previous videos. So we're going to, with our tag end, create a loop in our line. We're going to wrap our tag around the top of that loop in our main line. 1, 2, 3 times. Pull that tight, remembering to lubricate our knots before we cinch them down, and then pull that down to the eye of our hook. You can then trim off our excess tag end, and that is how we connect our hook. So next step is very important. Depending on what baits you're using, they can be very lightweight. So sometimes it does help to add a little bit of weight for two reasons. Number one, to get your bait down in the water column that it needs to be. Number two is these floats are often not weighted. So just casting him in as he is, just with the weight of the bait, a lot of the time he's not going to sit upright, or he's not going to sit very deep in the water. So he'll kind of sit half sideways, sometimes it might sit quite a ways out the water. We essentially want to weight our line or our float enough that just the tip of the float, so this kind of top section here, is on the water line. So when you get a bite, even if it is the smallest of bites from the smallest of fish, you're going to see it go down straight away. They'll pull the float under with no issues whatsoever. So how we do that is, what I like to do is use little split shot sinkers, which are these little guys here. Look like a little Pac-Man, little open sinker there. So they come in a range of different sizes, and it does take a little bit of trial and error. I usually will use a smaller size than this, something like a AAA or a AA size, and I'll add 1, 2, maybe 3 depending on what float I'm using, and I'll add them one at a time and put my float in the water to see how it sits. You can always add more, but they can be a bit challenging to get back off. So I'll put one on, put it in, no good, put another one, there we go, our float's sitting perfect. So to apply these to our line, typically I like to use just a pair of pliers. So what I'll do, I'll put our line in the little kind of open mouth of that that sinker there. And then I'll get our pliers and I'll just gently squeeze him closed, just like so. That's enough that he grabs on the line. I don't like to press them down and flatten them, or else you'll never be able to move them. The benefit of doing it gently is we can still adjust him up and down our line, so we can get him right down near the hook, or we can get him right up near the float. And when we're adjusting the depth of our rig, moving the sinker can also help with your bait presentation as well. So that's our rig there. We have our float, we have our split shot sinker to our hook, and by using those little silicone float stoppers, we can adjust this top one here to move our float further up the line. So now our float can freely slide upwards, and we can adjust this bottom one to stop our float from sliding down to our bait. So we can adjust our depth depending on where the fish are, which when you're fishing for garfish and mullet can be absolutely essential to catching a prize catch. So guys, there it is. That's how we tie our little garfish / mullet rig with our quill float or our pencil float. Nice and adjustable, suitable for all different depths, plenty of different fish. Definitely one to know. Thanks for tuning in.